Hello, what's up? Hope everyone's doing well. You're gonna not be able to see me for this ride because I'm not gonna put the car light on, so I apologize. So here's what's happening. I just went to the Rally on the Rock, hosted in Bradford County in Wysox, BA. I went. It's been a long couple days. I went with my friend Carlos, who does the show with me. So bear with me if you can't hear me and stuff. Let me tell you what my agenda for this show tonight is. I'm half asleep and would like to stay awake. I won't be able to read the text or your messages and stuff because I'll be driving, obviously. But it helps me to just rant and rave. And although I'm a lunatic, I'm not such a lunatic that I rant and rave to myself. Not yet, anyways. So yes, you won't be able to see me. And yes, the audio will probably be crap. And yes, the internet will cut out several times. But I got 2 hours to drive, and I want to stay awake, so I'm going to rant and rave, and hopefully you enjoy listening to me if that's the type of thing you're into. So real quick, I'll be able to look at the chat here just for a minute. Just let me know if you guys could hear me. I will warn you, because I tried to do this on the way out, there are a couple patches that the internet will probably go out. But if anyone's watching right now, can you tell me if you could hear me? That would be great. Hear ya. Thank you, Motors. So yeah, I went to this thing, Rally at the Rock. Thank you guys, thank you. Thanks, that's good. So again, this won't be the highest quality thing. That's okay. I have fun with it, and you're helping me stay awake, which is important, so thank you. Yeah, it was called Rally on the Rock. It was cool. It's the second year I've been there. State Rep Doug McClinko, it was at his property. Very, very nice guy. I really enjoy, it's really nice to me. When I ran, he was one of the people I ran against for Congress. And I thought that he was one of the people that, you know, told me that, you know, it's had good things to say to me. And I think he's someone who has convictions. And yeah, so it was at his house. Steve Bannon was supposed to be at the event, but he ended up hanging out with Trump this weekend. Brigadier General Spalding was there. I got to chat with him, got to chat with some Congress members, got to chat with some state level politicians and county commissioners. So it was a good time. I had fun. General Spalding gave a great speech along with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon called in and over speakerphone so everyone could hear through a microphone. And Bannon and Spalding talked about the threat from China. That was kind of the keynote address. And it was very interesting. He talked a lot about how 5G is, the way he explained it, the way General Spalding explained it is, 4G is iPhone, and that China couldn't compete with like the tech companies in the United States with 4G. So 5G is kind of going beyond the cell phone, and it will be a network that's all around us, but that's doing like constant facial recognition to the point where the harmless way, quote unquote, of looking at it would be you're at a stoplight and you're like, I'd like a cheeseburger. And it picks that up and is able to, in real time, send you data about what you're saying. Which obviously, if a government's getting that information for nefarious purposes, whether it be the Chinese government, or I would argue, although it wasn't brought up, even the United States government, that's a lack of privacy that could be the final nail in the coffin of what it means to be an individual or a human. He also talked about China's development of artificial intelligence, and basically was arguing that this is how the new wars will be fought. It's going to be fought economically and technologically, and your data is going to be the forefront of that war, which is why you should be careful about not being flippant to signing your data away to, you know, companies that could be using them for nefarious purposes. Also talked a little about the virus being engineered in a Chinese lab, possibly. I think it was. And then China's infiltration of our academic system and how all of our cultural institutions have been infiltrated by Chinese or corporations beholden to the Chinese government. And one of the things General Spalding said, and Steve Bannon was echoing this and had good things to say as well, but one of the things that you're looking for when someone talks about this is a lack of xenophobia. And let me say what I mean. Oftentimes in a rush to argue what we think's politically right, we lose sight that there are consequences of our actions no matter what we do. And many times, if we're talking about foreign adversaries, what could get lost in the shuffle is innocent people that come from that foreign area. So let me give you an example. In the mad rush for the Democrats to see Russians under every bed, there cast aspersions amongst the people of Russia. And I remember years ago I was writing about how there were notices that were sent through the FBI that said that people should be viewed with suspicion if they had Russian heritage. That's incredibly offensive and horrible. I mean, that's what led to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II under FDR. So we have to be very careful about that. And I was pleased that General Spalding took the time, as I've seen Trump do, to say the people of China are not our enemy. The people of China are under a brutal communist dictatorship. And I thought that was important to say. Just like you've heard Trump say to the Iranian people, we're with you, people of Iran. It's your government that is doing you and us wrong. Now, regardless of what you think, if you say, no, I don't think Iran's our enemy, I disagree with you. But even if you're a friend of mine on the left that says, I don't want to go that far, we're at least paying lip service, which granted might not be much, but still to say our enemies do not extend to it's all the people of that country. That's not who we are, and we need to remember that. And I do think that that's a good lesson, and I'm glad that General Spalding brought that up. So I was pleased with it. And he was generous enough to talk to me personally for about 15 minutes afterwards, and we talked about China, and we talked about Ukraine and the impeachment. And one of the questions I had, and obviously seeing as how it's an ongoing matter, someone involved in our intelligence apparatus and in our foreign policy like General Spalding is not going to be able to give me a straightforward answer. I understand, because it's an ongoing situation. But I said, if we see the corruption we saw in the impeachment scandal over the Ukraine, where Hunter Biden was getting money that was funneled from the Democrats to the Ukrainian energy industry back into Hunter Biden's coffers, and we see how the Democrats were willing to impeach a president over potentially investigating that, and given what General Spalding and Steve Bannon said about the threat of China and how terrible they are, what will the Democrats' reaction be if we start to investigate the $1.1 billion, billion with a B, $1.1 billion energy deal that Hunter Biden was central in between the United States and China? See, this is the dirty little secret. Everyone that was screaming Russia at you, even Mitt Romney and all these Republicans and John McCain, and while they were screaming Russia, China was eating our lunch and continues to eat our lunch. Now, I still contend that our biggest threat is corrupt actors from within. But it ties in with China, as many of these corrupt actors within, politicians of both sides, have gotten personally enriched from Chinese companies or pro-China interest or the Chinese government. They've infiltrated our academia, as we see. They've infiltrated our tech sector. They steal intellectual property at incredible rates. They're mining our data. I don't think they intentionally released this virus, but certainly they exploited the release of it. And one of the things, and so, General Spalding wasn't able to give me specific answers, but he was generous and game to talk about the conversation and about the corruption of the impeachment. So I would have loved to have talked to Steve Bannon, but unfortunately wasn't in the cards. So yeah, it was a good weekend though. Carlos put me up at his house for the weekend, very kind. His wonderful wife Melinda made me some awesome lasagna, so that was great. So yeah, it was a good time. I got to hang out with Todd, my other radio co-host, Saturday night too for a while, so that was cool. So all good. Representative Dan Muser was there. I believe, I forget the number of the district he represents, but it's south of District 12, I believe. It's more towards the southeast, I believe, of Pennsylvania. And Congressman Muser is always very kind to me and always is willing to talk with me. And basically, I only got to talk to him for a second, but I just said, because people were talking about advice for our congresspeople. And I said, here's my advice for Republican congresspeople. At this point, I'm not so interested, particularly in the House of Representatives, of what policies you're voting for. Because unfortunately, the truth is, one of the things you could say about the Democrats is they stick together. And because they have the majority, there is no vote to be cast by a Republican that will be able to prevent whatever the Democrats want in the House of Representatives. It just won't happen. So at this point, going into 2020, here's what I want. Here's my advice to Republican representatives. I live in rural Pennsylvania. I see people all around me that are scared, most of which don't care at all about politics or never think about it. Or if they hear me talk about politics, they're like, shut up, Rob, no one wants to hear you talk about politics. I think these people are some of the greatest people that make our country run. Farmers, welders, truck drivers, all of these groups. Right? I really think that. All they want to do is work and be left alone. They don't want to deal with government. They don't want to deal with politics. That's all they want. That's it. Now they're being told by my governor, Tom Wolf, that they're cowards if they're worried about not being able to feed their families and go to work. That they're selfish if they want to attend weddings or funerals in their family. That they're immoral if they want to gather at things like church events. They're told that they have privilege based on their skin color if they're my white friends. They're privileged. Some of the least privileged people you'll find in this country. What's privileged about working your finger to the bone for the betterment of your society and your family? Where's the privilege in that? But they're sneered at for their skin color, for their political beliefs, for their religious beliefs. No one speaks up for them. They're treated like trash every day. And they didn't speak up. They said, whatever, I just want to be left alone and keep working. Now they're told you can't work. That's what they're being told. Nope, you can't work. You can go protest, you can go riot, but you can't work. You got to shut down your business if you're non-essential. And they're losing their homes and their businesses, and they're getting late on their payments for their rent or for their electric bills. So what's my advice for a congressman? I said, tell your colleagues, please start defending these people. Let them know that their life matters, that someone has their back. Let them know that the United States is the greatest country in the history of the world and that it's worth fighting for. Let them know that they're not immoral because of their skin color. Let them know that they're valued and that we understand, even if you're a Democrat and you believe that you need to social distance and you need to take away people's rights and they need to sacrifice economically and they need to sacrifice with not being able to see their loved ones. Let them know that that sacrifice is appreciated. Even if you're a Democrat, that's what these politicians should do. Stop treating them like crap. Stop ignoring them. The very least that a Republican politician should be doing is willing to defend this great country and stopping with the lie that it's just a big systemic racist country founded on racism and it's a terrible place and it needs to be all the institutions need to be tore apart. Is that so hard? Is it so hard to be represented or to be elected to represent people of a certain district and actually care about those people? Even if your policy is different from what many of those people want, at least care about them. At least say that you care about them. At least understand that they're suffering. Is that so hard? Is it so hard to stand up for them and say, no, we're not going to listen to people say that they're garbage or that they have sin because of their skin color or that they're selfish cowards like Tom Wolf calls them. Now, Dan Muser's a nice guy, and he's been doing good things in Congress. He has. And so please don't take it to mean that I was yelling at Dan. Though I am telling Dan that I think even he could be a stronger voice, though he's been good. But what I'm asking him is, let your colleagues know that's what people need. That's what they need right now. They're They're tired of being treated like criminals while criminals are treated like heroes. And then, I said one last thing, which is a trend that I'm trying to catch on, because catchy phrases matter. They catch on, right? Like, make America great again. So here is my phrase in response to Black Lives Matter. Are you ready? And I tweeted this the other day. Of course, I don't have a big reach, so it didn't get much attention. But see if you all like this. And it works better in print because you can see. Black Lives Matter. That's why I'm against Black Lives Matter. So lowercase, Black Lives Matter. In other words, people that are black, their lives matter. They go through real problems. Some of them are unique to those communities. We should do more to help solve those problems. We should understand things like violence and homicide in those communities are despicable and really need to be worked on. We need to understand that on average, blacks are more likely to be poor, and that's something that we need to work on. Does that mean everything's systemically racist? No. Does it mean racism could play a factor? It could. Does it mean that everything's it's all black people's fault? No. But does it mean that there's no room for personal responsibility? Absolutely not. It's complicated. The issues matter. Black lives matter. Of course they do. However, because I believe that, I am against Black Lives Matter as in the organization. Because the organization of Black Lives Matter would be bad not only for the United States, but their policy positions would directly harm inner city black lives first and foremost. For example, defunding the police, where we can see homicides are spiking already at the demoralization and the defunding of the police. Ending the nuclear family, which is one of the biggest crises in the black community we need to solve, single-parent households. Backing teachers' unions, backing them that are against things like charter schools, which are one of the most effective things for inner-city black communities, giving black parents the choice of where to send their children to school. These are policies that Black Lives Matter is against. Not to mention the either deflection of, the excusing of, or the endorsing of violence that occurs primarily in black communities. Hey, thanks for the donation, man. Appreciate it. Sorry, I can't really read the comments. And in addition, the focus on it as purely a racial issue causes racial tensions and divisions, as I say all the time, that allows the real people that are exploiting poor people and working class people all around this country, our elected leaders, the leaders of our institutions. The focus on race allows Nike that runs a sweatshop to say Black Lives Matter, and then so-called Black Lives Matter cultural leaders like LeBron James or Colin Kaepernick can wear Nike gear and say, yay, Nike. All they have to do is say Black Lives Matter. For all of those reasons and more, I think that Black Lives Matter. That's why I hate the organization Black Lives Matter. And that's what that's my message that I'm trying to convey. Black Lives Matter, that's why I'm against Black Lives Matter, capitalized the second time. So, Muser thought it was clever, so hopefully, maybe it's something people could use. But it is what it is. That was my spiel. That's about the only advice I gave. But yeah, I had fun. It was a fun event. What am I saving up for now financially? So far I've received about $700-800 towards my computer. The computer was $1,200, so I got another $400 to pay on it. Make no mistake, I've purchased the computer, but I did it with a Newegg credit card, so I'm trying to pay it off before it accumulates interest. I think it was a Newegg credit card. You see what I'm saying now. So that's $400 or $400 or $500 left on the computer. Then, after that, what I want to do is get some editing software, though I have someone who might be able to donate that to me. But I also need to get more microphone equipment for mobile streaming. So if I'm on the street with my phone and filming like I am now, except I'm at a rally, I'll be able to have an actual quality microphone. I also need to re-up my podcast subscription and start putting things on podcasts. And then, after that, who knows? We'll see where we go. There will come a point where hopefully I don't need much hardware or software anymore, and then I can take that money towards being able to grow my channel in the sense of advertising, merchandise, and things like that. And ultimately, although I'm not a greedy person, for the first time in my life, there's only been 2 times in my life I've ever been concerned about money. And that was when, well, as long as I can pay my bills, don't get me wrong. It's easy to not be concerned about money when you're a big fat guy like me, not missing any meals, and when you got a roof over your head and you're paying all your bills. I've always managed to do that. I'm lucky. I am. I've managed to do that. But the only time I actually cared about saving money and maybe improving my financial situation, only 2 times in my life. One was when I met my now wife, Courtney, and I realized, oh, geez, I got this girl that I really like. It'd be nice to, like, you know, actually have some wealth with her. And now that I found out, after years of trying, that in January I'll be having my first kid. It's now all of a sudden money seems important, so I'm working a second job, you know. And it's not that I've been lazy, but I've been complacent. I didn't care about money, so I stayed at the same old job, even though I have a master's degree and I'm making a job that you don't even need a high school degree for. You know, finally making $15 an hour, but been there 9 years and I'm making about $15 an hour. So I'll be honest, at that point, if I get money through this channel, it'll help me just raise a family, and it will help me work less, so I'll be able to spend more time on the channel as well. So that's where your money's going. Now, I feel guilty because I have people that donate, and by the way, I will be for those of you that have recently supported me on Patreon, I will be doing a video exclusively for Patreon, and I will be doing a video for everyone where I just thank those Patreon members. So thank you so much if you're donating there, and I will get to recognizing you. I've just been brutally busy. As you can see, most of my videos have just been in the car here lately, so I've been brutally busy. So I do apologize for that, but I will get around to that. But anyways, yeah, I really do thank you, and I feel guilty even if you're only giving $2-3 if I don't do a video for a week, because I'm like, that's not fair. You know, people have, through support of me, have supported me financially, and I'm not making tons of money, but it's still support, and I owe people something for that. So I do terribly apologize if it seems like the quantity of content that I've put out lately has been lower. But I'm really trying to get started doing this second job. On a side note, if you don't feel like just donating and you're someone who could use life insurance, which everyone should have life insurance, I'm now a licensed life insurance agent and would love to help you out. Even if you don't buy from me, even if I can't get licensed in your state, I can point you in the right direction and offer you kind of just some suggestions. I'm no expert. I'd be learning with you, but I'd do my best to try to help you out. I would. But you can help me financially if you purchase life insurance as well. So something to think about if you guys are into that. So what else to talk about? That was my weekend. You know, in general, what can I say about the Rally on the Rock in general? You know, there was probably 7 speakers, a couple people, pastors, giving religious invocations. And then the people that were running for office or that hold office, like the congressman, the general, etc. Of those 7 or 8 speakers, 2 of the best, might I add, were immigrants from Kenya. Who, listen, immigration's tough. I wish I could have did Dylan's show Friday that was all about immigration. I think that ultimately, I'm not against legal, not illegal, but legal. I'm not against legal immigration. However, I think that the number one criteria for legal immigration is seeking out people that can benefit our country. We should not be trying to import people to help people around the world. That is not the goal of our government. Our government exists as a collective agreement between the citizens of the United States to look out for each other, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your religion, regardless of your sexual preference, regardless of your country of origin. If you are a United States citizen, you are an American. Regardless if you're originally from Kenya, regardless if you're a Democrat, regardless if you're a Muslim, I don't care. This government you deserve to have this government work for you, period. And so some of the greatest Americans I know are legal immigrants. Now, do we go too far to import cheap labor through H1N1 visas and stuff like that, or H1B visas? Yes. Should we be very strict and make sure that we're not accepting too many people that we then can't sustain? Yes. But I will not look upon legal immigrants that did the right thing, who wanted only to come to this, the greatest country in the world. I will not look at them like they're anything other than my brothers and sisters. They are. Period. End of story. And in my life, the immigrants that I've happened to meet disproportionately show a love for the United States that's inspiring. And these two gentlemen that spoke from Kenya were inspiring. Listening to them talk about how they adore Donald Trump, how they, and more than that, because if you're watching, you're like, oh, because it's just political. But it wasn't just that. It was how they adore the American system, because they know they've lived in a system that wasn't as good as this one. And so to see their appreciation it's inspiring. And I thought they were tremendous speeches that they gave. And I didn't get to talk to them in person as much as I would have liked to, but if they would happen to watch this, I was really impressed. And I really will say, you spoke more eloquently than I could, and my hat's off to you. It's very inspiring. For someone that grew up here and takes things for granted like me, it's inspiring to see someone who did everything right and worked so hard just to come here and then try to contribute to our government or to our country. That's inspiring. Talking about volunteering already in their communities because they appreciate their communities. Not in a partisan way, just helping out the communities because the communities welcome them in. That's amazing. That's great stuff. And so my hat goes off to them, and I thought it was really cool to see. I really did. So that was cool about it. The other thing I'll say is they had like a shooting range there and Civil War reenactors. Josh Prince, who's been on our radio show, who's one of the premier Second Amendment lawyers in Pennsylvania, got to chat with him for a while. That was cool. Had a really good conversation with a new friend of mine, someone I think I'd met in passing before, but a county committee member in Lycoming named Paul Cady. Really great guy, former cop, great things to say. I'm inspired when I see people that are just average Americans that when you talk to, look, I hate to brag about myself, but I understand I have somewhat of a gift. I'm a talker, I gab, you know, I am privileged. I do have privilege, by the way. I have all sorts of privileges. One of the privileges I have was I have a brain, an intellect that allows me to have a specific kind of knowledge, which is kind of to be able to talk about politics and things like that. Now, if I had to rate myself on an intelligence scale, I would say that I'm average. You might say, man, Rob seems like a smart guy. He seems like he knows what he's talking about, X, Y, and Z. You should see me try to change the oil. It took me like 3 hours to replace the toilet seat one time. My wife did the upstairs one. It took 10 minutes, you know? So, I mean, everyone has their intelligences. I don't think I'm unduly intelligent, but I am gifted in a way of certain things that I talk about. And sometimes I think people, just everyday normal Americans of any political persuasion, again, sometimes I think they think, well, I don't know. I hear these people talk and I don't talk like that, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because I don't feel I have anything to add. You do have something to add. And I say this if you're watching and you're a Democrat. You have something to add too. You do. If you're one of my friends that's left-leaning that I've been arguing with on Facebook, your opinion matters. I might disagree with you. I might think you're crazy, but your opinion matters. Trust me when I tell you that you, believe it or not, probably know just about as much as everyone who does this for a career, that does politics for a career. The difference is you're not putting it in terms of politics. But many political questions aren't something that you need to be a scientist or, you know, to be an expert in. It's just questions of value. And so your opinion is as worthwhile as anyone else's. That doesn't mean that maybe your opinion means we should adapt your position as a policy position because, you know, well, if everyone's opinion's equal, then, no, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying it matters. Sorry about that. That'll happen routinely. Hey, am I back? Am I back? Back. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, but I was just saying real quick, in case it goes out again, if it goes out, if you stick with me, I promise it'll only be out like 20, 30 seconds usually, and then I'll be back. And for those of you who don't know, I got a late night trip. I know the quality of these videos suck. I get it. I know people have said, if it cuts out, why don't you just record it? I get that too. I love you guys. I do. I'm humbled that you want to listen to me. But my number one reason for doing this video is so I don't fall asleep because I'm driving late and it's been a late week. I feel crazy if I'm just recording, talking to myself as opposed to someone listening live. So thank you for those of you that have stuck with me. I really appreciate it. I do. So yeah, I thought it was a good event. Anyways, when you go to an event, you see normal people like that. It's inspiring. It's nice to know there are people that are, out there and they're thinking about things. And a lot of these people, because it's a Republican event, are thinking like I think. And, I spend so much time debating people on Twitch that are Marxist, or talking to friends on Facebook that are Trump haters and, Hillary Clinton supporters. And it's nice to know that there are people out there that think like you. It's nice. That's why I like talking to you all, too. So, I went from 14 people down to 7 as soon as I lost the internet. See how it works? Curse you, internet! I'm going to blame YouTube. Nah, it's the interstate. That's what it is. But yeah, thank you, 7, for sticking around. I assure you the internet will go out again at some point, and I'll be down for 20 seconds, so bear with me. All right, other subjects to talk about. I wanted to say something about this post office scandal, which is hilarious. There's a lot to talk about. There's the fact that a post office that's been failing forever, that's basically dying, not only because it's been dying because it's old technology, an old way of sending things when we all have emails and UPS and Amazon and blah, blah, blah. That's the big reason it's dying. But then during COVID, the volume of mail's been incredibly lower. So the fact that budgets are being cut, to me, is obviously sensible. Now, the argument's being made, but it's because of the election. I'll get to that. So that's the first thing. I don't understand why a postal service that Barack Obama commented on, what are we supposed to do? Just print infinite money for every organization? Every government agency? They need another $5 billion here, $5 billion there, $5 billion here. Isn't it funny how all of the sudden the Democrats are frugal with our spending again? They're the opposite is what I'm trying to say. Remember $1 for Trump's wall. No, honey, we can't spend that. So, to protect the sanctity of our country and our elections, in large part, by keeping illegal immigrants out, we can't spend the money for that. But the Postal Service that's archaic and largely unnecessary, yes, we need to keep it afloat. The second thing that's hilarious about this story is, it is so funny seeing people, the same people that don't mind, like, what are you, an Alex Jones follower? Blah, blah, blah. Those same people that are taking pictures. Anytime they see a mailbox on a truck, it's as if they think Donald Trump's personally driving it, like, I showed up and snagged another mailbox. It's just unbelievable. Now, the third thing to say about this story, the fourth thing's the kicker. The fourth thing's the take I've only heard me say. The third thing that's worth talking about is, I will have to check. I have seen, in particular, an individual post in Erie, Pennsylvania. I saw an article because I tried my best to do my due diligence. I saw an article where this particular post office was saying that they felt that Trump was making a mistake and blah, 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 and it would affect the election. However, as far as I'm aware, the National Post Office Service itself said that they will be able to handle the volume of election mail. So what's the crime here? If the post office can handle the elections, and if they're failing anyways, and that's the reason for the cuts, what's the crime here? It's like anything else. They assume, it must be to deprive people of votes. Now, let me give you the take that you'll only hear from me, at least I think. That's why you tune in, right? I don't have to repeat what other people are saying. And this is, maybe someone else has said this. I haven't watched a lot of media this weekend, so let's start with some things we could agree on the left or the right. Now, on the right, we will talk about the potential for rampant voter fraud, which is real, it exists. There have been cases recently where Democratic operatives, through mail fraud, have been found to be fraudulent and affect elections. That's occurred. Period. It's easier to cheat and vote by mail. Yes, I know someone will say, but you could cheat in person. Yes, but it's much easier, and you could do it at a much grander scale if you're doing it through mail. However, for the sake of this argument, for the sake of reaching across the aisle, let's put that argument away. Let's forget about that. So we're going to pretend that doesn't exist, okay? I know it's hard because if you're one of the people like me that are concerned about voter fraud, you're like, what do you mean put that argument away? So let's put it away. We don't need that argument, okay? Throw it away. So if you're going to discuss this with your Democratic friends, you don't have to say voter fraud, right? Just ignore it if you know that they're going to say no, and then you're just going to get in a big argument about that. So forget about that argument. One of the things I like to do is how to win an argument through the path of least resistance. So how can you agree with your opponent, or opponent's not a good word, agree with the person you're having a discussion with as many times as possible, but still prove that their point is wrong or your point is right? And so that's what I'm trying to do here. So let's not discuss voter fraud, okay? However, I could be wrong about this, but I think even the left will admit that there's potential for your ballot to not be counted if it's through the mail. And this has been backed up by multiple stories, even New York Times stories. 2,000 ballots rejected here, 3,000 ballots rejected here. It doesn't have to be nefarious. It could be someone didn't put the right postage on or the right return address or things like that. It's an added step, which means with that added step, it will be more likely for people, even if it's just an accident, I'm not saying it's fraud, it will be more likely for people's vote to not be counted. Can we all agree with that? We can agree with that, right? Now, aren't the Democrats the party that says voter ID, for example, is bad? Because if even one person couldn't get an ID and vote, we're disenfranchising that person. So wouldn't they be critical of a system that will throw away people's votes, even if it's not intentional? Now, I know what you might be saying. If you're on the Democrat side, you might be pushing back and saying, yes, but still, that'll be less people than if you don't have mail-in voting and they just can't get out to vote. Maybe so. But let's be honest, votes will be lost. Why is that being ignored by the left? The party that seems to speak and say every vote matters, why is that being ignored? Can we agree, based on that, can I come to an agreement with my friends on the left that all things considered, pretend COVID doesn't exist, pretend that everyone's polling stations 2 minutes from their house, can we agree that voting in person for everyone would be preferable than voting by mail? Because there's far less of a chance of your ballot getting lost, of it actually counting, if you need help, of there being attendants that could help you, etc. I don't think it's an unfair claim to claim that. Okay, now let's go further with this argument. If it's preferable to vote in person, and the only reason to not vote in person is COVID, that's why they're saying we need the mail-in ballots. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack a little. So therefore, their argument is Trump doesn't want people to vote. That's why he's against the mail service system. That's why he's against the postal service. Okay? Now put that in your pocket. That's what they're saying about Trump. On the inverse, the Democrats don't want you to vote in person. They don't. They're blaming COVID. They're doing whatever. They're saying, no, we don't want to vote in person. Now, Dr. Fauci, who they point to as a leader all the time, as the expert, Fauci's came out just this weekend and said, there is no reason that we'll need to inhibit people's right to vote or ability to vote in person. That's what Dr. Fauci, the expert they point to, that we have to trust. That's what he said. We know that when it came to issues that the Democrats found important, such as protesting, rioting, at least with the protesting, let's be fair as possible. We know when it came to hundreds of thousands of protesting, they were okay with it. So why are they all of a sudden, again, worried about the virus, saying, oh, no, but you can't go vote in person? To me, what that sounds like, if you're going to say, if the president's quote unquote against mail-in voting, therefore he wants less people to vote, My contention would be if the Democrats, especially when Fauci's saying it's okay, wants to keep people from voting in person, they're trying to censor the vote. Only the difference, as I've proved to you already, is the voting in person is the premier best way to vote because it's the best chance of your vote counting. So if the Democrats want to do a tit for tat and say, Trump's against the mail voting, therefore he's unscrupulous and knows he'll lose and he's trying to rig the election. What do you say about a group of people that are trying to prevent you from voting the more successful way? In other words, why can't I level the exact same criticism, except more meaningfully, at the Democrats for trying to prevent me and you from voting in person? Why are the Republicans so bad at fighting back? No one can come up with this argument? No one? And of course the media are sheep, and they're just going to parrot it, and this is the newest scandal. If not Russia, then COVID. If not COVID, then Stormy Daniels. If not Stormy, then the Charlottesville Nazis are good people lie. On and Ukraine impeachment. On and on and on and on and on and on and on. One fake scandal after another. Over and over and over and over. Again, accusing others of exactly what they're doing. They're the ones, we agree that voting in person is the premier method. It is the best method to make sure that your vote counts. We agree with that. They're the ones that want to prevent you from doing that. They want to force you to use a mechanism where every time it's used, thousands of ballots, even if we're not talking about fraud, if we're just talking about good old human error, thousands of ballots are refused. They're forcing you into that situation where the likelihood of your vote counting is even less. How is that not them? If Trump's doing it to force you not to use the mail, and that's evidence that he knows he'll lose and he's rigging the election, how is this not true of the Democrats? It's nonsense. And it's time to start calling it out when we see these Democrats constantly play these games with COVID. It's the deadliest disease in the world. You have to stay indoors. You can't go to your mom's funeral. You can't go to your family's wedding. You can't go visit your grandparents in the nursing home. You can't go to your non-essential job. You can't go to church because it's so deadly. You just got to make the sacrifice. Oh, yeah, but the experts say if you're protesting for Black Lives Matter, it's okay. Go ahead, get out there. Yep, that's fine. Oh, you want to go riot? That's okay. We'll send cops after people that aren't wearing masks. We'll let people go that are burning down buildings. If you open your business when it's non-essential, the cops will come arrest you. If you burn that business down, the cops will tip their cap to you and say, yep, that's cool, go for it. The hypocrisy around COVID is stunning. I'm not an expert. I talk about the numbers. I talk about the data I can see. There's only one thing I know about COVID. One, that I could say I'm 98% sure of. It primarily affects old people, and we should be damn well doing everything we can to protect old people. Which means quarantining that percentage of the population. That doesn't mean you have to quarantine the entire population. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know exactly who needed to be quarantined. I could tell you the dangers of allowing your rights to be stripped. I could tell you the economic impact will be devastating from lockdowns, but I'm not going to pretend to tell you medical advice on what would have been good. I could tell you what my suggestion was, which is bearing out that the most important, I would have not locked down. I see evidence that the lockdowns, for example, I think it's Peru had the hardest lockdown in the world. It is now the #1 country per capita for deaths of COVID. The hardest lockdown, the most deaths. But that's just my opinion. That's me reading data. It's not me saying 100% certainty. I am 100% certain that even though I'm not an expert, I knew not to send COVID patients to nursing homes like Tom Wolfe, like Gretchen Whitmer, like Murphy in New Jersey, like Cuomo in New York. I knew that was a disaster. I knew if we all know that this population, old people, are the most likely to be affected by COVID, the last thing I would do is send intentionally infected people into areas with all old people, like nursing homes. That is ridiculous. And everyone knows it. And as a result, tens of thousands of people died needlessly. And then they look at those deaths and say, see, that we were right to take your rights away. See, look at how many people died. Because you killed them. I heard someone suggest today, and it's quite serious, that they would like to serve my governor, Tom Wolf, with a murder indictment. Negligent homicide for intentionally setting the conditions that he knew, him and his health experts knew, were more likely to cause the deaths of people in nursing homes. And they did it anyways. They knew. Because they want to cause pain. They wanted an excuse to take your rights away. They wanted an excuse to collapse the economy. And it's your fault. You want to know why it's your fault? Because you didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. And so now you must be punished. When will you learn your lesson? Vote Democrat or they will destroy the country. You have to learn that lesson. You want it to end? You want COVID to end? You want the riots to end? Vote Joe Biden. Otherwise, they'll keep burning stuff down. They'll say we need to stay locked down forever. Now they're coming out, and I think it was the CDC that said people infected with COVID are immune for 3 months. Now, I'm willing to admit I could be wrong, and I'm a layman. And perhaps one of my friends that know more in this will tell me I'm wrong. But isn't a vaccine just basically a low dose of the virus that encourages the building bodies? So you get the vaccine in a low enough dose that it doesn't cause damage to you, but that it tricks your body into building up antibodies against it. If that only works for 3 months, does that mean we have to get the vaccine every 3 months? I ain't taking no vaccine. I don't know about you. Ain't happening. Is that what the world's going to look like from now to ever? Hey, you have to pay $1,000 every 3 months for this vaccine. What about cheap medications like hydrochloroquine that possibly could work? Again, I don't know if it works or not. I don't know. I'm not making that claim. I have no clue. I think doctors have said that it worked. Doctors have said that it didn't work. I don't know. But I certainly think they should be allowed to express their opinions. But I'm not offering you medical advice. I don't know. I will offer you this advice. If you get COVID, it's serious. Please take it serious. Please don't go out in the community and possibly spread it to other people. Even if you get through it, it could severely affect older people. I totally believe that. That's good advice. So I'm not giving you medical advice on certain medications or anything like that. I don't know. I don't know. I know you should be allowed to talk about it. But that's the deal with this election business. So in the name of COVID, even when the head of the head epidemiologist, Dr. Fauci, that the left points to for everything, even when he says, yeah, voting in person will be safe, they say no. Just like when the head of the CDC, and here's something that I love, by the way. This happened when I was doing my radio show yesterday, okay? I try, when possible, and I know if you watch me a lot, you know I'm bad at this, but I try within possible to interact with people in the chat. I really do. It's hard for me tonight because I'm driving, obviously. But if I'm in my computer at home, I try to interact with people as much as possible. Sometimes I get to ranting and raving, and I don't do it, and I should do better, but I really do. And that includes, I think I'm one of the best at this, and correct me if I'm wrong, if interacting with people that disagree with me. I routinely say, go ahead, get in my Discord, call in, let's have a discussion. I don't try to back down from anyone. Now, there's obvious if you're making threats or you're just making insults, that's one thing. But if it seems like you seriously want to have a discussion, even if I disagree, I try to do that. One of my pet peeves, which, you know, it is what it is, so I don't really care. I'll say something on my show. It happened this Saturday. So I'm doing my radio show, which I also broadcast on my channel that you can find. I'm doing my show, and we're talking about COVID. And I mentioned that the head of the CDC The director of the CDC said at this point, through suicides, through substance abuse, through mental health problems and other things, we're seeing many more people under the age of 18, school-age population, die of non-COVID related things as a result of the lockdown as opposed to COVID. And he said basically this is almost verbatim, I cannot stress the importance enough of getting these kids back to school. Now that's the head of the CDC. Then I'm told by the left, you have to trust the experts, Well, all of a sudden they don't trust the expert. So I cited that quote, and someone in my chat that would have been disagreeing with me says, I'm gonna need a source for that. And then 30 seconds later, as I'm still doing my radio show and trying to dig up the source to put it in the chat so that that person could read, he says something snarky to the effect of like, yeah, that's what I thought. Bye, done with this channel. And then 10 seconds later, I had it posted. If you're gonna say that I don't have a source for something, at least wait around for 5 minutes to see if I can present it. You don't say it and then leave 30 seconds later, because I could provide the source. Now, maybe that person was arguing in good faith, and because they thought, this guy's just talking out his behind and left, they actually missed. I'm not misrepresenting this. The head of the CDC said that. And maybe as someone on the left, it sounds preposterous. It probably does. I think about my friends in the debate community that are on the left. If I told them, the head of the CDC, the CDC that you say we have to trust, they're the experts. The head of the CDC said way more kids are dying as a result of the lockdown than as a result of COVID. And he says we have to get them back to school. Do you know he said that? They would probably be like, there's no chance at all that he said that. You probably saw that on Fox News or Breitbart and it's a lie. He said it. There's audio of it. And my Democrat friends would probably be like, wait, what? Really? And I'm sure many of them would look at it and they would be able to use mental gymnastics and say, no, that's not what it really means. But he said it. And the fact that they're incredulous, like, of course he didn't say that, proves the negligence of our media. Because you would think that that would be something the media would be all over if they actually cared about children's health. Oh, the lockdowns are killing more kids? The director of the CDC says we need for their health, let alone their education, we need to get them back to school. Crickets. So many crickets that you can't convince your left-wing friends. Oh, I can't believe that the director of the CDC, that's obviously not true. Obviously the CDC says we should keep schools locked down. No, they don't. I told you from the beginning that inevitably what would happen would be that the same people shouting at you, shut up and give your rights up, shut up and let the economy collapse, you have to trust the experts. I said from day one, they'll say that until the experts disagree with them. And then they'll say, yeah, whatever, I'm still right. Trust the other experts then. And that's exactly what they've done. They selectively decide when to trust the experts. Now, a smart person on the left could say, isn't that what you're doing, Rob? You're for sending the kids back, but you quibble with the experts when they say things like, oh, it's cool, COVID could kill millions, but it's not as big of a threat as white supremacy, so go ahead and go out and protest for George Floyd. Yeah, because they're wrong there. The reason that I believe the experts, quote unquote, in the school cases, every single study is the exact same. Kids aren't dying. Kids are less likely to spread the virus. There has not been one case in the United States of a kid in school spreading it to a teacher. People say, yes, but the kids will get it at school and then they'll give it to their grandparents. Again, the strategy is lock down the grandparents then. You don't lock down the healthy population to protect the sick. You lock down the sick and then allow the healthy population to continue as usual life so that the resources in the economy remains vibrant, people remain healthy and don't have to use up health resources that otherwise could be used for the elderly that could be potentially affected by COVID, because the lockdown's causing mental health issues, suicides, substance abuse, domestic abuses, child abuse cases. All of these become added burdens on our healthcare system that could otherwise be directed directly at the elderly population with COVID. That's what should be done. Instead, we've locked down kids, which according to the director of the CDC, caused more kids to die. And we did the opposite of locking down the old people. We intentionally sent COVID patients to the nursing homes. So the young, healthy population, we did the exact worst policy for. We locked down so much that they died of other things because they weren't really at risk that much for COVID. And then the older population that is at risk for COVID, we say, instead of locking you down, we'll literally send COVID patients in with you. So the experts picked the exact wrong policy for both of those two populations. Yet you still have to trust them. You have to trust everything they say. Oh, only when they agree with the Democrats, though. When they don't agree with the Democrats, then no. We don't trust them. Now, I'm going to do a full video on this. I'll probably wait one additional week, just to be safe. For those of you that don't know, I recently did a long video on a friend of mine from Clarion County. I'm from a small rural county in Pennsylvania called Clarion. The Clarion County Fair occurred. Of all the little rural counties around here, there's fairs that go on all through the summer. These fairs are important for local economies. It's important for people that work on farms, particularly kids in 4-H clubs that sell their livestock there, and that enables them to keep farming for a year. Farmers, people that make a living off crafts, food vendors that make a living. All of these groups rely on these county fairs. They lost their livelihood this year because of COVID. So the fact that Clarion County opened up was their one chance to try to make up for that financially as best they could. And someone took pictures and started change.org petitions to get the people who put on the Clarion County Fair fired, because these pictures showed probably around 1,000 people watching a demolition derby, most of which weren't wearing masks. And so it was on, and all my friends on Facebook were on one side or the other of, oh, I'm ashamed to be from Clarion. Oh my goodness, look at what these monsters did. And then the other side, no, this is freedom, baby. Which I agree with that side more. Now, I did a whole video on this, and about how the very people that were saying you're a monster if you went to the fair because you're endangering public health said just weeks earlier, oh, but I also endangered in public health by violating social distancing orders, but it was for Black Lives Matter, so it was okay. So we talked about all this. However, here's what I wanted to discuss today. What's today's date? 16th going on 17th? What's the incubation period for COVID? 14 days? In other words, if you get COVID, you will be showing significant signs, if you're going to, within 14 days, right? I was told in Clarion County, thanks to the Clarion County Fair occurring, we were going to see huge amounts of COVID patients. Huge! Of course you had the jerks that were like, I hope they all die. That'll fix them for being anti-science. Those people were trolls, whatever. But you had other people that were like, oh my goodness, it's going to be such a burden on our hospital system. These cases are going to go through the roof. According to numbers I checked yesterday, in July 31st, right around the time this fair occurred, the amount of COVID positive cases in totality for Clarion County since COVID's been in the country was 71. 14 days later, after the apocalypse, where we were going to see thousands of COVID patients in my county, you know what the number is? 82. That's 11. There's also 6 or 7 probable cases. Let's add that in just for good measure. Heck, let's say around 20 COVID cases. Where is the mass spike? You were certain. You people that said you were ashamed. Not that, hey, maybe it's not the best idea, or, you know, it could possibly lead to more of an illness. They were certain. They were ashamed of people. Absolutely positive they were jeopardizing public health. They would be vindicated, sadly, by the rise of the virus in my county. Where are they? Where are the cases? What happened? Now, let's say that maybe more cases will arise and I'll be proven wrong. We'll see. My contention was, even if there were cases that resulted, it was people's choice to be there. If you didn't like it, don't go. But so far, we're not seeing those cases, as I suspected would have happened. So I asked to those people that said you were ashamed of those people. You know, the kids in 4-H, that was the one chance they got to sell the livestock that they put money and hours in all year. Do you think it would have been worth it? Nothing happened to tell them, sorry, you can't do this? The vendors that relied on that money to keep their lights on, you think shutting them down and crushing them economically would have been worth it when it would have prevented almost no cases? You think so? Now, I'm not dumb, right? This is why you watch me. I'm not stupid, okay? I know how to argue the other side of an issue. I know what switch side debate is. What will be told to me will be, if I'm pretending to be on the opposite side of this position, they'll say, Rob, it doesn't matter if the cases happened. What matters is they could have happened. And these people at the fair knew it could have happened. And so therefore they jeopardized public health. Even if it doesn't happen in the end, they still were taking a risk that was unnecessary and selfish. And that's why I'm ashamed. Right? That's what they'll say. The only problem for the person that will say that is, I'm ready for them to say that. Because my response to them is, yeah, so did Black Lives Matter. You see, the lie that's told, and this is how you know it's a lie, I've just got you to debunk one of the biggest talking points of the left. And that talking point is this. Well, the scientists say that the protests didn't have anything to do with spreading the disease. That's a lie. It's garbage. The virus is not so smart that it knows to infect Trump supporters but not Black Lives Matter protesters. It's a lie. The argument that, oh, but it's all about masks. There were people without masks at many of those Black Lives Matter protesters. I saw it. But even still, even if we assume they were all wearing masks, no one in the world says masks prevent the virus. No one. No one. Therefore, the mere fact that you were social distancing, remember, there are two things that they say we need to be doing to make us moral. One, social distancing. Second, wearing a mask. Wearing a mask is secondary. According to the left, according to the experts, the real way you stop this virus is first and foremost social distancing. If you have to be out, then wear a mask. But you should, every time you can, you should social distance. Even Dr. Fauci admitted, avoid large crowds. Any large crowd can spread the disease. And so to listen to the left cite disingenuous doctors that say, oh, there's no proof that the protest helped a spike in the disease. You want to know why there's no proof? How do we get proof of where people got the disease from? Well, it's through something called contact tracing. Basically, it's asking everyone who got the disease to list everywhere they've been and then calling other people that have been to those same places and testing them to see if they contact traced and got the disease. Only problem is, story after story shows that contact tracers were specifically told not to ask questions about whether or not COVID positive people attended protest. So, surprise, surprise, you're not allowed to ask if they're at the protest, and then the results of your study don't show that the protest had any cause. No kidding, Sherlock. It's obviously garbage. But, again, remember, going back to that theme, the theme of, even if you're right, how can I concede as many arguments of my opponents and still prove they're wrong? Well, I just showed you how. Even if I accept your argument that the experts say actually protesting for Black Lives Matter, unbelievably, against all odds, somehow the virus will not spread during the protest. It didn't. If I believe that, you just told me that doesn't matter. You said all that matters is the people that went to the Clarion County Fair knew that they could spread the virus. So even if the data shows it didn't spread the virus, the harm was the fact that they were selfish and knew that they could have spread the virus. That was the harm. The same would be true of Black Lives Matter. Even if you believe they didn't spread the virus, every scientist was saying, don't go in large crowds. You got to social distance. That's what all their scientists were saying. That's why people couldn't go to work. That's why they couldn't go to funerals. They didn't say, well, it'll only be some events. That's not what they said. They said social distance. Don't gather in large crowds. So you knew if you were in Black Lives Matter that it was a risk that it could spread the disease. Now, I would think that it probably did spread the disease somewhat, though probably not as bad as people think. But it doesn't matter if it actually did or not. According to the left, the selfish thing is that you thought it could spread it and you didn't care. You went out and violated the order anyways. That's the argument. Yes, I could sit there and tell you how ridiculous the scientists that are trying to claim, oh no, go march for Donald Trump, COVID will spread like wildfire. Go to the Clarion County Fair, COVID will spread like wildfire. 100,000 strong of you decide to protest and riot and burn down a city? No problem, that won't spread the virus. As ridiculous as that sounds, fine, whatever, I don't even need that argument. Didn't you say that Trump supporters that knew they were at risk of spreading the virus were selfish then if they didn't social distance? If that's all it takes, if it doesn't matter if the virus actually spread or not, it was just the selfishness you want to talk about, why can't the same be said of Black Lives Matter? Do you think one person in Clarion County that predicted there would be hundreds or thousands of increase in COVID cases because of the Clarion County Fair, do you think one of them will be on Facebook this week saying, my bad, I was wrong? You think there'll be one? I don't. Not one. There won't be one person. Sad. Now I want to go talk about white privilege some more. Let's do it. So a person I know that's in the debate community responded to me. If that person happens to be watching here, I don't say names because I'm not. This person wasn't even rude to me. I'm saying like that. They're actually they're snarky, so am I. That's kind of the way debaters talk to each other. You're trying to win an argument, so you use this kind of sarcasm and stuff like that. So I don't mind it. I don't think it's a bad conversation. I'm actually enjoying it. And if that person happens to be watching this, I doubt, but if they happen to be, I didn't not respond to you this morning. You responded to me at like 7 a.m. I didn't not respond because your point's not worthy of responding or that I couldn't respond because it was too impressive. The reason I didn't respond was I've literally been on the road all day. So I hopefully will get around to it tomorrow. But I'll respond now. Well, of course, I'm on my way home now. It's going to start raining real bad. Getting close to home. This conversation's gone several ways. I'm not going to rehash the entirety of the white privilege argument, right? But I want to hit some of the key points and concessions. One of the things that's exciting for me is picture that you're a mixed martial artist or a boxer or if you get, sorry about that, lost you for a second. So we should be good now, hopefully. We good now? Yeah, we're good. It might cut out here and there just because now it's raining. I feel the same way with debate. If I'm talking to someone that it's clearly like, oh, okay. I don't mean to be rude, but there's just some people that you can tell you don't know a lot about this particular subject. Maybe you're smarter than me in other subjects, but in this particular subject, maybe you just aren't aware of the facts or you just have thinking on it that's not really adding up. Whatever. I'm sure there's things like that I talk about too, so I'm not trying to be arrogant. But when it's someone in the debate community, particularly someone you know that was a good debater, that kind of gets, it's like, okay, good. Here's someone that I know. I don't have to worry about pulling any punches. You know exactly, they know me, I know them. We know exactly what we're getting into. We know what's happening, right? We know what to expect. So, with all due respect, and every time someone says that, they usually mean the opposite. But I'm not trying to personally attack this person. Your post about white privilege to me, your last two posts, are a gift to me and everyone who has a problem with the racial division in this country. It is so riddled with contradictions and admissions that are devastating for your side that it's almost laughable. It's really that bad. And I will get to responding to it, and I'll make sure that my audience and that the audience that can see both of our conversation gets to see exactly what you're saying and the admissions and contradictions that come from you. Oftentimes in the heat of an argument, you'll slip out truths that maybe you didn't want people to know. That's why I love debating Black Lives Matter. That's why I love debating people that endorse it. Because the face that they're putting on for the average members of the community is not who they really are. The riots, the racism, that's who they really are. The majority of them. Not all of them. In fact, maybe not even the majority, but the people running the movement. That's who they are. White privilege is inherent in capitalism, which we're seeking to reject. Thank you, person who was arguing with me, for your kind admission. Yes, this is about destroying capitalism. Yes, this is being led by Marxists. No, it's not just solely about saying we want cops to do better in the black community. Because your admission is, in a system of capitalism, this sort of systemic racism is inevitable, thereby implying capitalism must be rejected. Exactly. Thank you. Yep. Totally. That's what it's about. That's exactly what I've been criticizing. So now the debate's just, are you a Marxist or are you a capitalist? I know which one I am. Just be honest. Let's have the debate then. Just say we're Marxist or we're socialist. Just say it. Stop lying. That's what it is. Okay, got it. Moving on. Let's discuss it then. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your implication and then examples that lead to the claim that you can't be racist towards white people. That racism needs power structure in order to exist. And therefore, a person of color cannot be racist towards a white person because they don't have structural power. One, it's not true. They do have structural power. Every institution in this country is totally backing Black Lives Matter and totally endorsing narratives like the 1619 Project and the White Fragility book that is designed to denigrate white people and denigrate the United States of America and say that it was founded strictly on racism. So they do have that sort of power. However, thank you for admitting what I've been warning people, that these people truly believe that they could enact racial prejudice against you based on your skin color, as long as you're a certain skin color and they're a certain skin color, and that's not racist. Me and you and regular people thought racism was bigotry based on race. Prejudicial beliefs about someone based solely on their race. That's racism. But we were wrong according to them. Nope. If a black person dislikes you because you're white, that's not racism. If a black person decides to beat you in the head with a brick because he hates white people, that's not racism. Because supposedly that black guy had no power. Tell that to the 5 cops in Dallas in 2014 or 15 that were murdered by a Black Lives Matter supporter who said he wanted to kill cops and white people. Oh, I'm sure that those cops' family will be happy to know, hey, guess what? That's not racism because he didn't have political power, the racist thug that killed your family member. It's nonsense. Absolute garbage. But when you say, look, that's what these people believe. No, we don't believe that. So thank you, person in the debate community who knows better, who I'm not punching down to have a discussion with. Thank you for your admission. This is about bringing down capitalism, and you can't be racist towards white people, and people of color can't be racist. Thank you so much. Thank you for those admissions. I really appreciate it. You've already lost the debate, if you couldn't tell, on those 2 things alone. But let's go further to some of the things that were said. And again, let me clarify here. I know I'm sounding like a jerk. Trust me, this is how the person's sounding to me. I don't have any hard feelings as far as like I personally dislike this person, anything like that. I'm just being a debater, that's all. Now, I believe everything I'm saying, don't get me wrong, but my tone and the way I'm aggressively arguing is because I know I'm not punching down. I'm speaking to someone who is a really good debater, so I don't feel bad. But I'm not implying personal animus to this person or anything. This person makes a claim that I've seen many other people make, several of them, that are worth addressing. First, because we're talking about the Cannon Hinnant story. The claim that they're making is justice was served for Cannon Hinnant. The man that killed him was arrested. So was the man that killed George Floyd. The response to that is then as follows. Yes, but the other 3 cops weren't arrested. And it took 4 days as opposed to 1 day. And the other cops got bail or whatever. That proves the racism. That proves systemic racism. Now ask yourself, why would that prove systemic racism? Or the Ahmaud Arbery case, or Breonna Taylor, the fact their cops didn't get arrested, that proves racism. Why would that prove racism? What exactly about that proves racism? If I'm a teacher, or I'm a bus driver, let's say, I was talking to a bus driver today. Let's say I'm a bus driver. I remember when I was riding school buses, I was a little shit, man. I'm loud, if you couldn't tell. My voice gets high-pitched. I had to be like nails on a chalkboard to my poor bus driver. Let's say I'm a bus driver and there's 14-year-old kids on the bus, one white and one black. And they're squawking. And the bus driver, massively inappropriately and criminally, gets up, slaps that black kid in the face, turns immediately, slaps the white kid in the face. No, let me forget the white kid for a minute. Let's just say he slaps the black kid in the face. Does that prove racism? No. It proves that bus driver acted incredibly inappropriately, criminally probably, and he should be charged for it. But it doesn't prove that the reason he slapped that kid was for being a racist. Now let's say he smacks a white kid too. Was he racist towards what? Did he smack the white kid for being white? Was that racism? Now I understand the difference is, well, we're not just talking about the attack, we're talking about what justice was served. So if the bus driver doesn't get in trouble for slapping the black kid, does that prove racism? Ah, see, the system's racist. He slapped the black kid and he didn't get in trouble for it. But let's say he also slapped the white kid and didn't get in trouble for that. Now what? What's more likely? That it proves that there's something wrong with the system? That it's corrupt? It protects its own? Or does it prove when he got away with it with the black kid, that was racism, but when he got away with it with the white kid, that wasn't racism? Do you see what I'm trying to say? What is it about? Why can we say if there was a black victim, it proves racism? No, it doesn't. How do you think that proves racism? Show me one example anywhere of evidence that George Floyd was killed because of the color of his skin. I don't see it. Show me one example anywhere that the reason that the other 3 cops didn't get arrested, or that you're not happy with the amount of time it took Chauvin to be arrested. Show me one piece of evidence that it's because George Floyd was black. I don't see any. The implication is this. If it was a white man, it wouldn't have happened that way. So Cannon Hinnant was white. Therefore, they arrested his killer almost immediately. You see? That proves the racism. Because when it was a white person murdered, they arrested them almost immediately. But that's sort of an apples to oranges comparison, as I rightfully admit. What about, is there a case of cops killing a white man and not being arrested? Yes, there are dozens. How about the case of Tony Timpa in Dallas, 2015? White man calls police because he needs help and has mental issues. Police proceed to sit on his back and his neck area as he shouts, "I can't breathe, and you're killing me," and they laugh at him and mock him, and then he dies. Unlike in the George Floyd case, where someone was arrested within 4 days, no one was charged in these cases for years. The police fought successfully to withhold the body cam footage for years. Then they went on trial, and none of them faced charges. Or were convicted, I mean. So, let's just say an equally heinous murder, this time of a white person, with less justice for the police officers. So I asked my friend that I'm arguing with, how does that fit into your narrative? Did they kill Tony Timpa because he was white? Was it racism against whites that there wasn't justice there? He says, are you ready for this? You ready? You know what Tony Timpa does? It proves systemic racism. Yep, you got that right. If a black person's killed and the cops don't face justice that people want, that proves systemic racism. And if a white person is killed and the cops don't face justice that people want, that also proves systemic racism against black people. How much more insane can you get? Now, in fairness, he said he didn't say it proves systemic racism. He chose his words carefully, the person that's discussing this with me. And he says it proves systemic injustice. Notice how he changed his words there. Yes, there is injustice. Yes, there are corrupt cops. Yes, there are corrupt law enforcement agencies that seek to protect their own. That doesn't prove it's racism. It proves corruption. We'll never be able to solve that corruption if you keep misidentifying it as racism. How could... It's just nonsense. But it gets even better. Oh, Matthew Meyer's on here. Matt, by the way, I do want to apologize to you for two things, Matthew, who was on a video the other day chatting with me. I'm glad you're back. Regardless of what you think of me, you're giving me views, so hey, I'll take it. And I do appreciate someone from the other side. One, maybe I was a little too harsh on you, but, I agree with everything I said, but maybe I was a little too harsh. Secondly, and more importantly, and keep in mind I won't be able to read your comments because I'm driving, but I may have got you confused with someone I was talking with on my Facebook page, and if so, I apologize. So if you're not the person that I was talking to that is a newspaper editor, I sincerely apologize. Your names were very, very similar. So I'm not sure if you're the same person or not. So only you will know, I guess. And I'm not going to say that other person's name, so it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, your positions are nonsensical. So Tony Timpa's death, right? What's the explanation for that? But let's go further. Let me give you an even further example of the insanity in this conversation. We're talking about Nick Sandman, Covington High School kid, white kid, him and his buddies. Black adult racists come up, start screaming at them, yelling homophobic and racial slurs at them. Some Native Americans, or Indians, as I think they prefer to be called, so I don't want to, I'm not intentionally trying to offend, so I'll say Indians. See this. Proceed. One of the Indians that got in the kid's face and beat a drum in his face and then lied and said they surrounded him, he said that the adult black racists were telling those kids harsh truths. Imagine sitting there watching a bunch of KKK men shout at black teenagers and saying, well, hey, those Klansmen are saying some harsh truths. Are you kidding me? Yelling racist and homophobic slurs or harsh truths? The other Indian that was with Nathan Phillips, the man banging the drum, the keeper of the sacred pipe, he was screaming at the kids, go back to your country. That's right, he was shouting racist things at these kids. The media defended adult racists to attack white kids because those kids were seen as Trump supporters. Now, I was told the reason the Cannon Hinton story wasn't covered was it wasn't newsworthy. Yet somehow, the biggest story for our media for well over a week was a white kid smirking. I suppose if Cannon Hinton had smirked before he was executed, perhaps then it would have been a story, right, media? I said, where does that... So my hypothesis is the media is intentionally pushing racially divisive stories. The response I get is, no, white privilege, systemic racism against blacks, and if the media didn't cover the Cannon Hinnant story, it's because it wasn't newsworthy. Well, if the media doesn't cover stories that aren't newsworthy, why did they cover a white kid smirking at racist? What was the newsworthy coverage there? Why did they double down after they knew the kid got death threats and still trying to make excuses for the story? When they saw the full video and knew it wasn't true, why did they double down? Because they wanted to push the racially divisive narrative, just like why they breathlessly cover every single racial hoax. Again, we're not talking, let me be very clear here, we are not talking about George Floyd here. There is something different about a law enforcement officer engaging in a brutal crime that makes it more newsworthy, in my opinion. I do agree with that. We're talking about a white kid smirking versus a white kid murdered. Why is one newsworthy and why is one not? Why was one the biggest story in the country that they tried to connect to Trump and one all but ignored? Why does the media breathlessly cover every racial hoax? Anytime a piece of exercise equipment's hanging from a tree, breathless coverage. Anytime Jussie Smollett or Bubba Wallace tells obviously ludicrous stories, though Bubba Wallace's story wasn't ludicrous, there actually was a noose. It wasn't a noose though, it was a garage pole hanger, which everyone could see with 30 seconds of research had existed in that very garage stall even the years before Bubba Wallace used it. Why'd they cover that so harshly? And you might say, well look, because white racism exists, it's not just cops, right? That's why that would be newsworthy. Racism exists, like Charlottesville, right? And so when there is white on black crime, that's newsworthy. Only problem is, according to the Bureau of Justice statistics, actually, blacks are 48 times more likely to commit crimes against whites than vice versa. Now, I would prefer stop sensationalizing any interracial crime. I don't want to hear constant stories of blacks harming whites either. But the question is, why are all the stories of whites harming black, or even racial hoaxes, why are they pushed on end when there's far more of the other stories to go around, but they don't cover them? I wonder why. Anyways, on the Nick Sandmann story, I kept talking about it. How do you respond to Nick Sandmann? If there's white privilege, can you show me the inverse of that? Can you show me the entire media, a bunch of white racists yelling at a young black kid, the black kid smirking at them, and the media defending the racist? Can you show me that? Can you? Can you show me members of the media saying that young black kid had a, quote, punchable face, like Reza Islam from CNN did? Can you show me that? But wait a minute, I thought white privilege and all the institutions were against black people, systemic racism, and the media just wasn't covering Cannon Hinnant. It's not because they're interested in a racial narrative. It's just for clicks. It's just because they didn't think it was newsworthy. How could that be? Don't worry, my friends. My debate friend who's arguing with me, he finally addresses this. What do you think the case of Nick Sandmann proves? Is it like me that the media is pushing a racial narrative? Nope, not according to my debate friend. You ready for this? You want to know what that case proves? Drum roll, please. The media sticking up for adult black racist and racist Native or Native Americans or Indians, however they prefer to be called, that are defending those racists. The media defended them and attacked the children they were attacking. And that story proves white privilege. Yep, that's the argument that the person who's an intelligent person, I assure you, that's his argument. Are you following that? Oh, you're white? Black racist yelled at you? You smirked? The media then made you public enemy number one for over a week? You got death threats? That proves white privilege. Do you see how twisted? Do you see why I push back against these concepts and the misuse of them? Do you see how it warps your brain? Who in their right mind could think that? Yet here's an intelligent person telling me, oh, that proves, Nick Sandmann's case proves white privilege. And I bet that the person who typed that, and I didn't get around to responding today, probably had a big grin on his face like, yeah, I'm crushing this argument. It's laughable. If white privilege, if getting attacked for your skin color and becoming the biggest enemy in the country, the most hated person in the country, because the media attacked you because adult black racists yelled at you and you happen to be white and smirked, if that's white privilege, then I guess the entire idea of decrying, oh my goodness, white privilege, it's such an important thing. It sounds pretty crappy to me if that's white privilege. Now, here's his reason for why it's white privilege. Which, it's only 99%. It's white and connections, but that's not white privilege. And you know how I know it's not white privilege? You ready for this? Because there have been black people that have been attacked for their skin color who have fought back and were successful. You know what the most defining characteristic is? Do you have money and resources to fight back? In other words, as I've been saying all week, the privilege is wealth versus being poor. For example, at one point, and this is terrible as much as I dislike the man, apparently someone spray painted a racial slur on LeBron James' gate in his gated community. For starters, let me say, it's heinous. Number one, it is terrible. Completely condemn it. Number two, if instead of painting a racial slur, the person who did that would have decided to break down that gate, enter the property, and threaten to shoot LeBron, his wife, and their dog, he would have been a hero on the left, just like the people that attacked the McCloskeys' property and broke their gate. Oh wait, no. Because of the garbage racial division in this country, that person who broke the gate would have been considered a would-be murderer and a racist. Just to put this thing in perspective, spray paint something on someone's gate, crime of the century. Break down their gate and threaten to kill them. How dare you seek to defend yourself? That's your white privilege, trying to defend yourself. However, LeBron James was able to use his platform to seek justice, to have the police exhaustively looking for this person. It wasn't black privilege. It's because he's a wealthy celebrity. Nick Sandman probably has wealthy friends or had wealthy people that saw the story and wanted to help. That's not white privilege. And this is the constant theme that you see. Person of color killed proves racism. White person killed in the same way, it proves that bad things happen to people. Cops that kill black man not arrested, that proves racism. Cops that kill white man not arrested. Well, sometimes the system's unjust. Wealthy black person gets attacked in a heinous way. Uses platform to seek justice. Well, hey, good for him. That's a great thing that happened. Wealthy white kid gets attacked by black racists, has something heinous done to him. The media attacks him and says, oh, that's white privilege, that you were able to try to seek justice. Now, there's one more thing that I want to mention regarding this post. One is an outright, complete 180 degrees of the truth. I'm not going to say lie, because lie implies intent. I don't know if it was a lie, but a misstatement of the truth that is completely opposite. The other admission that I love, that it's like pulling teeth, because again, most of these people won't just say what you will about me. I'll tell you my honest opinions. Maybe someone would disagree. I don't know. I guess who am I to brag about myself? But let me tell you this. Many times when you argue with these people, they won't be forthright with you, like the communist thing. Yes, it's about rejecting capitalism. Exactly. Yes, I know it. That's what it's about. They won't tell the truth. Well, then they slip up and they let you know. Thank you. I'll take that. I'll put that in my pocket. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. One of the things that I'm constantly doing is talking about intersectionality and about cultural Marxism. And the idea is we just divide people based on these immutable characteristics or other group characteristics, and you're not an individual, you're just a member of that group. And then saying how one of those sides is oppressors and the other side is oppressed. And what they'll do is individually within those group settings, like if we're looking at it versus race, they will look at data and not look at the reasons behind the data and say that it proves racism. So a black man is killed by a cop, that proves racism. No, it doesn't. We need to look at it could be racism. It could not be racism. It could be the cop was a jerk. It could be he had a personal vendetta. It could be he was on a power trip with anyone, and on and on and on. Or it could be racism. But you have to prove your case. The fact that the man that was killed was black doesn't prove it was for his skin color that he was killed. Nor does it mean if blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be hurt by in a physical altercation with police, that doesn't prove racism. There are about 2.5 times more violent, which would explain cops that have to deal with violent communities probably are more likely to use violence. That proves, what it shows is you can't just point to the numbers and say, aha, that proves racism. It might, but are there other explanations? What are your proof that that proves racism? That's what they do with that group. However, just like with COVID, where they say, trust the experts, as soon as the experts contradict them, then they don't trust the experts. It's the same way here. It's the data. If the numbers show a discrepancy, it proves racism. If it shows a discrepancy, it proves racism. This person that I was discussing this with said, you ready for this? White privilege is because people that are white happen to have positions of power around the world, which proves it's the same with being a male, that most of the people in positions of power are male, which is why violence is issued to blacks and females more often. Now, the first thing that shows is that is a fundamental misstatement of facts. Every measure of violence we see, almost every, at least in the United States, and I'm pretty sure around the world, shows overwhelmingly men are the majority victims of violence. Overwhelmingly, whether it be jobs that are violent are more likely to result in violence, whether it be dying in wars, whether it be suicides, whether it be getting into violent altercations, whether it be being victims of homicides. Every single category, it seems, almost every at least. So that's just wrong. But if your insinuation is, oh, and clearly if you're the overwhelming victim of violence, then your group is being prejudiced against, so then men are prejudiced against, right? Isn't that what that proves? Oh no, but men are also the perpetrators of violence. Okay, so now you're looking at reasons, just like I said they would do. As soon as they can't just, when it comes to certain things, they'll say, see, just look at the numbers. But what are the reasons behind the numbers? No, it must be racism. So when I do the same with men, see, look at the numbers. Men are more likely to be the victims. No, that doesn't prove sexism. There could be good reasons for that. Men are more violent. Oh, my mistake. And of course that leads into the argument that I make over and over and over that no one ever has a good answer for, which is, if the discrepancy between blacks and whites proves, and the focus we need to look at about systemic racism, the number one issue we look at, according to Black Lives Matter and the media, is law enforcement. Law enforcement discriminates against black people. Why? Because the data shows they're more likely to be arrested, they're more likely to get longer sentences, they're more likely to be convicted, etc., etc., etc. Like something like 10 or 15% more likely than whites. Okay, so we can't look at the reasons behind that. We just have to say, if there's a discrepancy that proves racism, Even greater than the gap between blacks and whites is the gaps between men and women. Now, if looking at law enforcement prejudice and which group law enforcement targets the most, if that's the most important standard by measuring discrimination, the gap between men being targeted by law enforcement more than women is far larger than the gap between blacks being targeted by whites. Therefore, our law enforcement system is sexist against men. So here's my person I'm debating, conceding the country is racist, the country is sexist. Why? Because of law enforcement disproportionately affecting black people and violence disproportionately affecting black people and women. That's not true. Law enforcement affects men more, violence affects men more. So that proves bigotry against men, right? Of course not. You know what it proves? I've had this argument before. You ready for this? Do you know what a system that prioritizes violence against men and that has law enforcement treat men more harshly? Do you think that proves that the system's sexist against men? It doesn't. You know what it proves? The system is sexist against women. It's so funny. There is nothing you could say to disprove this. It is not based on logic. It is based on faith. And when it is based on faith, facts don't matter. Logic doesn't matter. There is nothing you could say. No data set that you could point to. No incident that you could point to. Everything proves racism. Everything proves sexism against women. Women are the majority of victims of violence? Well, that proves against women. Oh wait, it's actually men that are the majority of the victims of violence? That also proves sexism against women. Still the patriarchy, baby. Everything's the patriarchy. Everything. Everything's racism. Everything. I brought up the Yale discrimination suit. This person says to me, oh, well, the fact that the DOJ didn't release the numbers that only 5.8% of Yale is African American, that proves that I don't really believe that the DOJ blah, blah, blah. What about that number? What do you think about that? Only 5.8% of Yale is black. Again, that's because he's interested in equality of outcomes. There's less of a percentage of blacks than I would like. There's also only 47% whites at Yale, whereas whites make up over 60% of the population. So who are we going to get rid of? Person I'm debating. So it's also prejudiced against whites, right? So what? Take away some of the seats for Asians, Jewish people, immigrants. No, sorry, we have too many immigrants at the school now. Immigrants only make up 2% of the population of the United States. So we can only have 2% of our population at Yale be immigrants. That's nonsense. You don't get to actively discriminate against people based on race and say, well, it's okay because I'd like to see the numbers go up of other skin colors. But again, here we have it. It's a clear, and one of the things that he asked me was, well, do you not believe in racism? Let me answer these questions he asked. Do I believe in racism? Of course, racism exists. Unlike many people, I don't believe, like he seemed to imply, I don't believe racism only comes if you have institutional power. I also don't believe that places like that, Black Lives Matter, don't have institutional power. To the contrary, they have much institutional power. Do I believe privilege exists? Yes, all sorts of privilege. Privilege for whites, privilege for blacks, privilege for men, privilege for women, and on and on and on and on and on. There's so much privilege, and there's so much convoluted, and so much of it has the majority of your privileges that really matter has nothing to do. Now, in today's current world, as opposed to 100 years ago, you have immense privilege. Ask Yale. Here's a black privilege, being able to write black-owned business. Because if it's white-owned, it's more likely to get burned down by a mob. I brought that up to my friend that's debating with me. You know what he said? Well, that proves capitalism, which we need to fight. If it was the opposite. But give me a second here, make sure I'm back. I'm almost home, so But I'll finish up here. Imagine the reverse. Imagine that black businesses are being targeted so much that business owners, even black ones, are writing on their windows, white-owned business. Do you think he'd say, well, that proves capitalism. That doesn't prove a racial privilege. It's just capitalism at work. Of course not. He'd say, oh my goodness, minority businesses are more likely to be targeted by violent mobs. Racism. But when it's white people, he's like, well, there's other explanations. Every single issue with all these people, I can admit there's white privilege. Why can't you admit that there's also detriments to being white in certain cases? You might say the white privilege outweighs the detriments to being white. That might even be true. It's so complicated, who knows? Why are you unwilling to admit there's black privilege? Why are you unwilling to admit there are situations where being white is harmful to you? Why is that? Why is that so hard? I'm able to admit all of them. You're the one who's selectively unable to admit them. So when you ask me, don't you believe in racism? Don't you believe in privilege? Yes, don't you? Oh, you only believe it could affect people of color, which is why you have no problem saying, oh, Nick Sandmann smirked, an adult black racist and the media attacked him. That proves Sandmann's privileged. All right, I'm going to be turning in here. Oh, I'm home finally. Thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful as always. I really apologize that I haven't been able to respond to the chat, but obviously I'm driving, so it's hard. I assume you guys were saying awesome things. Thank you to anyone who donated. I saw at least, I think Vita donated money, perhaps someone else. That's incredibly generous of you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm driving out to Pittsburgh tomorrow morning. Maybe I'll try to do a video, but the last time I drove out to Pittsburgh, the internet just kept going off and off and off and off and off. So I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see. Supposedly tomorrow night, I might be doing a debate. If I do that debate, it'll be on Prime K's channel, but I'm only going to do it if I can broadcast it on my channel. And by that, I mean, they've given me permission to broadcast, but if my technology is capable of doing that. I don't know what the topics are or anything like that, but we'll see. Matthew asks, where does culture come from? Genetics or environment? I would say almost exclusively environment. That would be my argument. It could come from genetics, but I'm not a race realist. I think that the people that want to talk about IQ and stuff are making a huge mistake, because I think the evidence shows that oftentimes what we see is that your environment influences your intelligence quotient, right? So for example, we've taken people from the same area, put half them in one community, in one country, and half them in a country around the world. And within a generation or two, their IQs differentiate vastly. So the argument then would be the environment is the only thing that I'm concerned with talking about. I'm not concerned about making genetic arguments. And in fact, I find it ironic that the people I see making the genetic arguments actually are the people talking about white privilege. Because when you say, well, wait a minute, if this system's set up to benefit white people because the world's controlled or the country's controlled by white people, and it sets up systems that benefit people that look like them, why are white people like 10th on the list of how much money they make a year and basically all the standards of living that we mark as success? Why are white people so far down the list? If they're privileged, if the system's set up to privilege them, and all these other groups that are underprivileged are beating the pants off them success-wise, what's going on? And the implication is it's because white people are inferior. That's why. You have every privilege as a white person, every. So on average, if your community, if the white community is doing worse than the Filipino-American community, it's because the Filipino-American community, they've overcame you despite your privilege, which means they're better than you. That's what it means, right? So, yeah, anyways, I don't have to, I apologize. It's just more garbage, just more garbage. Poor people are consistently discriminated against employment. It's just more garbage. Just on and on and on. Just repeat one talking point after another. Do you want to go back to what you did the other day? Oh, excuse me, Matthew. Why didn't you talk about the Christchurch shooting? What about it? Oh, that's what you did the other day. Oh, what about the Dallas shooting where Black Lives Matter shooter shot 5 people? What about the shooting in Provo, Matthew? What about it? What about the shooting in Austin the other day here where an Antifa person shot people? What about it? What about the person that burned to death in the buildings that burned down in Milwaukee? What about it, Matthew Meyer? Why are you pivoting? Why are you deflecting? Why won't you address any of these? Hey, what's up, Paul? You see how dumb you sounded, Matthew, the other day? That's not really an argument. That's just pivoting. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Paul. That was very generous of you. So I got to go. I'm going to get like 3 hours of sleep, so I really apologize. Thank you for keeping me awake. I was very safe while driving. Thank you, Matthew, even for being here, even if I think your arguments are ridiculous. Thank you so much, everyone else, for being here. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, look out for me. It should be 8 o'clock tomorrow night. I'll be doing that debate if I do it, so check it out. Destroyed by facts. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. As always, have a good one.